Hey, what's up? This is Jake here in Jake's shop. So today I figured I'd go ahead and do a video on the leaf springs. You know, I've got the car, after I finished the other coating on the last one there, I've got it flipped around and I'm going to end up bringing it down. You know, now it's time to work on the inside of the car. I could probably build some cradles to keep it, you know, flat and level and a little bit higher off the ground and mobile, but I'm going to go ahead and throw the rear axle back in it. And to do that, I've actually changed from a monoleaf to a multi-leaf suspension. So I figured I'd show a little bit about what I'm doing for that. You know, they actually make kits. I could have cut off the perches that are on this monoleaf axle and re-welded new ones on it. But I just didn't really want to go through all that effort when it's really just there's a couple things I'll show you here with the little distance change. Also going to do all new, brand new bushings in this thing. So I'll flip the camera around and, you know, a lot of guys do a lot of the body work on these cars and finish them without the axle or the front subframe in. So I'm going to do some of it without the front subframe in, but the rear axle is really not going to be in my way that much. I will want to mask it off really well and keep a bunch of dust and whatnot from building up on it, but I figure it'll get it out of my bench, get all that component of it back in the car. So yeah, I'll flip the camera around and show you a little bit about what I did to make a multi-leaf work with this monoleaf axle. Okay, so here we are. We've got the multi-leafs. Actually, it's kind of funny. These came out of my Firebird. You know, I've got a triangulated Ford link in that. So these are in decent enough shape. I went ahead and cleaned them up and painted them. You know, a couple of the clips I'm going to end up replacing, but I can do that later. I'm just not going to mess with that right now. There is polyurethane bushings on the front and the back of this where the perches sit in. One thing about a monoleaf is the spring is slightly narrower than the multi-leaf. It's actually slightly wider, at least on this car. You know. So the perches, there they are right there. They still fit in here, but the bushings are slightly different. So the monoleaf upper bushing is the only one that'll fit up inside there. Multi-leafs are wider. This is the base pad, which actually will still work on the base side of it because, you know, this flange is actually flat. Multi-leafs have a bump here. So really what I need to do is develop about 1 inch to 1.25 inch bushing between here and get longer grade 8 bolts to get that to sandwich into place. So you can kind of see this one's ready to be mocked up and set in. There's little bushings on the inside of here as well. You know, you get this as a kit. This is actually from Jegs. You know, they're not paying me to say this or anything, but I've had good luck with them. And I've got, this is their energy suspension polyurethane. I went with black, and you know, I didn't want a bunch of red stuff all over it. So yeah, those are the pads that are going to go into place. I'm going to go ahead and set this up on the table and then have a buddy come help me lift it off once I've got the axles bolted, or excuse me, the leaf springs bolted to it. And from what I remember, this is the front edge. It's actually got a little bit extra leaf, so it's kind of upside down and inverted, but this will be the front. This side with the extra leaf will be the front side. That when the axle turns, it's got a little extra push there. To keep it from twisting up, binding up, get wheel hop with something like that. So this is the back one, and actually you can kind of tell anyways because this is actually smaller, the perch, than the front perch. It's actually larger. So, and when you go to take your old ones out, you'll see that it's these. So these are the ones that were in the car. You know, it's just a monoleaf, and it's about 1/4 to 1/2 inch less in width than those, and it's just, you know, multi-leafs are pretty good in my experience. You know, if they've got pads in between them and whatnot, it keeps that binding from happening, especially if you've got a lot more power under the car. These might ride slightly smoother, but those will be, you know, a lot more, which is what's going to be needed for this car. So yeah, I'm going to take, these are the front perches, so I'm going to take these off. Yeah, I've used Crolls for a lot of things. It works really well, especially to pound all this stuff out of here. But anyways, I'm loosening these bolts up. I'm going to clean up these perches and paint them and then bolt them back into the car. Actually, I'm not. I'm going to bolt them to the leaf spring first and then bolt them into the car all as one assembly. Makes it a little easier that way. So getting the old bushings out, I had to do that on these new multi-leafs. Not new, but used. Basically, there's a center piece of steel here that I need to punch out. After that's out, I need to figure out how to pull these out. And I remember I've done these a long time ago, and I actually took a Sawzall and cut it slightly without trying to damage the spring, and then took it out. The new polyurethane bushings, kind of the same deal. They're actually a 2-piece bushing. You can see I've got both sides. So the front ones are a little thicker, and they're 2-piece. They slide in from each side, and they give you some they do give you some dielectric grease or petroleum to put in there. And a lot of the one complaint I've heard of or read about is that polyurethane bushings are kind of noisy. They kind of squeak and squiggle, and really a lot of it's because they, you know, if you don't grease them up a little bit before they go in there, they can kind of make a little ee sound, and it's not very noticeable unless you don't have the car running and you're pushing on it, I guess. But they're really nice because they're more firm. So anyways, I'll go ahead and finish cleaning these perches up, and I'll kind of show you what I'm doing here and how I'm going to put these new multi-leafs in. So I've got some square tube steel ready to rock here. I'm actually going to, you know, you can buy this stuff too that's all pre-done. It's actually a solid chunk of steel. This is really heavy, inch and a quarter steel I'm going to end up using. And it's a lot of because the multi-leafs I'm putting in this car are thicker. You know, you'd want to check exactly, because these came out of my Firebird, it's the same exact car, but I think these are a little beefier than normal, given the fact that there's 2 additional springs on that side. And I don't know if someone actually modified these or what, but I'm going to try them. You know, it's not going to be the end of the world. Worst case scenario, I can always get different springs if they act weird or not, but it definitely looks like these are made for a higher horsepower car, given all the extra springs on that one side to keep when that axle wants to torque up from the extra horsepower. So I'm gonna go ahead and bolt those on. We'll get some bushings in it and kind of show you a little bit about what that's gonna look like. Okay, so I thought I'd show this. Taking these bushings out was not fun at all. I ended up putting it on the press, and the old bushings were just basically welded. There's actually a piece of metal on the old bushings that wraps around the bushing itself in the back, and there's a center pin that was inside it. So I ended up pressing the center pin out first, and then I got a socket the exact right size of this bushing, and I was able to press this through the spring as well. It was really tricky. I had to set up some stands and whatnot to get that to press out. But once that was all out of the way, I could focus on the inner piece of steel that was in there. On the bushings, I have this, you can't put this in here, and this thing's all nasty and corroded anyway. So it was in here, and I couldn't get on the press to press this out. It was just all bunged up and, you know, a little bit of rust and whatnot. So while it was in the spring, I went ahead and used my vise, clamped it in, and I ran my Sawzall down the center of it very carefully. I actually didn't pierce this piece all the way through because I didn't want to damage the spring. It'd take a lot to really try and cut through the spring, but I didn't want to take a chance of getting it. So I pierced it, and then I reached in with a screwdriver and I pried it so that it sprung inside itself. You can kind of see after I've cut that out of the way. And then I was able to knock it out pretty well. I used a lot of Corollas as well, trying to clean that up. So now that this is all ready to go, it really just needs a light cleaning, and I'll go ahead and throw the bushings in this end. This is the front edge. Like I said earlier, this is the front side of the car with the extra leaves, and obviously this goes on it like that. So once those bushings are in, that piece will slide in, and then once I got these bolted to the axle, I can go ahead and bolt this right to the car after everything's all set up. You know, I've got my bushings all ready to go. Went ahead and shot a little paint on them. Nothing special. It was just too cheap to buy the bushings that you can buy in the kit. So yeah, really just clean this thing up. I went ahead and used the wire brush on the last one. I went ahead and did the other spring earlier, and it's not like rusty or too bad inside here. I mean, I'm just trying to clean the junk out of it, make sure it's got you know, no major things going on in here. And you know, leaf springs, to see a leaf spring rusted, at least in our area, to the point of like it being toast, pretty rare. You know, they don't use salts on the roads or anything around here, so it's really just a little bit of surface rust that I'm trying to clean out of there. And that way, when I go put the new bushings in, I can use the, it's some sort of, kind of like petroleum jelly, I guess, but it's a lot stickier, I noticed. And that just needs to be coated on everything. Again, that'll kind of keep the noise down, keep the bushing greased. So the bigger sets of bushings, it's a 2-piece bushing, are the ones that go in the front side of this spring. And everything else is smaller, all the rear bushings for the rear of it. So yeah, they give you a this little bit of grease. It's some sort of weird Formula 5 pre-lube. So anyways, I went ahead and ran this inside the spring and just kind of used my finger. You know, you should probably have a glove on when you do this. I don't know what's in this stuff really, but you know, sometimes I just don't care. But you might, you might not want this on your hands. I don't know. It's some sort of, it feels a lot like a thicker style of petroleum jelly that's in here. And really this is just keeping the bushings lubricated, and also, you know, That way they don't squeak too bad. They can kind of make that little rubbery squeak sound if you don't have it perfectly set up. So, and it also helps the bushing slide in. Now these aren't going to be super snug. They should slide in for the most part. Maybe a couple taps with the dead blow hammer, and at least that was on the other side. So, you know, you can kind of tack that in there. And they give you 2 of these because when I go to do the rear leaf springs on the shackles, they'll be the same thing. I went ahead and put the other ones in the other spring. Just same deal, just put some lubrication on it. I went ahead and did both sides. You know, it's not like there's going to be so much there's going to be really squirting out everywhere. So that'll be that. And then they fit kind of tight. My last time I just whacked it with the dead blow a few times, get those to set in. And it's kind of nice having this on the vise. I don't have it super snug in the vise because I obviously don't want to damage the spring, but since these are free springs off my Firebird, anyways, I'm not too worried about it. Just making sure they're both in there all the way, and then there we go. Because as long as they'll fit in the perch, we're good. Now this is the center pin that goes through the back. The front doesn't have one actually. This is just on the other side, the back side of the spring doesn't have one of these. Because those are the bolts that just fit in the shackle on the back. And I've got my hand on the back side, just kind of pushed in a little bit, that way I can feel when this pin's all the way through. And really when it's flush on this side, she should be about perfect. Okay, that's it. That bushing's ready to go. Now what I'm going to do, I'm probably just going to not bother showing a whole lot more of this because these springs are pretty much ready to go. My bushings are ready. I'll go ahead and bolt them all together, and then I'll show the final clip of it installed on the axle before I go ahead and put it in the Firebird Camaro. And we'll go from there. Okay, so I finished up that axle install and the bushings with everything, and I just thought I'd show. I got the car moved around here so I can get better access to it now that I've got my whole shop back. But yeah, everything went in pretty nicely. You know, it still sits pretty high. Obviously, there'll be a lot more weight on this car when it's got, you know, everything. It'll sit back down a little bit. And, you know, these are stock height springs. Those are aftermarket hangers in the back, so I could either cut them down or get stock ones depending on what I like, what I'm seeing after I kind of get all the weight and everything back in the car. But yeah, the bushings actually, hopefully you can kind of see this on the phone if I don't wiggle too much. But yeah, you can kind of see how they went in. I got grade 8 bolts on everything. Did find out that whoever had this car previously has the wrong lower mount on the driver's side. The correct one is on the passenger side. You can kind of tell because it's where the shocks are located. So I'll be changing that out before I actually get it on the road. It's way too close to the tire, obviously. But yeah, it looks nice under here. It's really kind of done for the most part under the car. Obviously, I've got to do brake and fuel lines, which I could have done on the rotisserie, but I didn't really want to deal with that. You know, I want to get it back on its feet here so I can get working on the inside, and I'll deal with the brake lines later. It doesn't take too long to put those in. So, yeah, hope you like that one. And yeah, next video I'll probably do is get cleaning and priming and finish the inside of this sucker. I'm going to do some lizard skin applications, both of their ceramic heat sound deadener and also their regular stuff. I'm going to clean up the firewall as well, separate. You can kind of see where my undercoating start line is now. Obviously that'll get masked off and blended in with paint eventually, so that line, well, it might change slightly, but yeah, everything's coming right along. And yeah, if you like this video, go ahead and hit like and subscribe. Thanks.